Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commvault Deep Dive Explainer. I am super excited to have you with us today as we jump into part 2 of our series. Today, we're zooming in on one absolutely critical component, the CommServe. Think of it like this. If a Commvault environment were a human body, the CommServe is, without a doubt, the brain. Every single decision, every schedule, every tiny piece of memory about what was backed up and when, it all lives right here. Literally no backup job starts, finishes, or gets remembered without the CommServe calling the shots. So here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll cover the brain of the CommCell, followed by the CommServe database. Then we'll look at the core services under the hood, break down the anatomy of a backup job, talk about protecting the brain, and finally wrap up with troubleshooting and logs. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the brain of the CommCell, and where exactly it sits in the grand scheme of things. So what is the CommServe exactly? Well, it really boils down to 4 defining traits. First up, it's the single control server. You only have one per environment. That makes it incredibly powerful, but it also means you have to fiercely protect it. Second, it holds the CommServe database, or CSDB, which we're going to look at closer in just a sec. Third, it runs a specific set of core Windows services. And fourth, and honestly, I want you to lock this into your memory for the entire explainer, it never, ever touches your backup data. It's the conductor of the orchestra, right? It's not playing the instruments. It directs the traffic, it records everything, but the actual data moves somewhere else entirely. To really visualize this, think of a Commvault environment, which we call a CommCell, as a stack made of 3 logical layers. Right at the very top is the CommServe. That's your control layer. Down in the middle, you've got the media agent. Think of this as the muscle. It's the data mover that reads, deduplicates, and writes to storage. And finally, at the bottom, you have your clients and agents. That's where your actual raw data lives. So control flows top down, but when data actually needs to move, it goes from the client at the bottom to the media agent in the middle and straight to storage. The CommServe just watches and orchestrates that whole conversation. Moving right along to Section 2, let's talk about the most critical piece of that brain, the CommServe database. The CommServe database runs on Microsoft SQL Server, and inside it, you'll find every single job record, the entire configuration of your CommCell, all your schedules, your plans, and a complete audit trail. Now contrast that with your actual backup data, which is just sitting on a disk somewhere else. Here's the catch, though. The backup data on the disk is utterly useless on its own without the CSDB. Why? Because the database is the only thing that knows what each piece of data actually is. It's literally the index card catalog for your entire library. And that brings us to a pretty harsh but totally crucial reality. Lose the CSDB, and you effectively lose everything. I mean it. Even if your backup data is sitting perfectly intact on a physical disk right in front of you, without that database, it's just a giant pile of unreadable blocks. When admins say, hey, the CommServe is down, what they almost always mean is that the SQL database is down. Its health is the entire CommCell's health. Period. Okay, Section 3. Let's pop the hood and look at the core services running behind the scenes. You see, the CommServe isn't just one giant monolithic program. It's actually a team of cooperating Windows services. First, we have the Job Manager, or Job MGR. Think of this guy as the scheduler and the traffic cop. It decides which jobs get to start, queues them up, and handles the retries. Then there's the Event Manager, Eve MGRS, which is the recorder. It captures all the alerts across the cell. Next is the Communication Service, or CVD. That's your messenger. And finally, the License Manager, CVLMGRS, which is essentially your accountant, just making sure your usage stays within bounds. So here's a massive pro tip for you. When you are troubleshooting a sudden outage, you are almost always going to be looking at one of these services. When you pull up the Windows Services panel, a stopped service right here explains almost every sudden drop in a Commvault environment. For example, if CVD, our messenger, goes down on a machine, that machine goes completely 100% silent to the rest of the cell. Checking this service list should absolutely be your first reflex. Let's put this into action with Section 4, the anatomy of a backup job. Let's actually follow a backup request right through the brain in 5 easy steps. Step 1, the trigger. A schedule fires off and lands right on the job manager's desk. Step 2, the decision. The job manager checks the game plan, looks at the targets and resources, and gives the green light to authorize the job. Step 3, dispatch. CVD acts as the messenger and signals the client and media agent to get moving. And hey, there's our golden rule again. Control flows out, but the data does not touch the CommServe. Step 4, data moves. The client sends its data straight to the media agent to be deduplicated and stored. The CommServe is just watching from the balcony at this point. Finally, step 5, record. The job status and metadata are written permanently into the CSDB. Done. And all of those behind-the-scenes steps, they build into what you actually see on your screen, the job controller. This is literally the job manager's work made visible to you. Every single row is a job that the brain has authorized and is actively tracking. So whether it's running, queued up, or pending, it's right there. When a job is stuck or struggling, this is the very first view you open to see what's going on. Next up, Section 5, Protecting the Brain. Let's talk disaster recovery. Because there's only one CommServe in your whole setup, disaster recovery for it is easily the most important safeguard you have. Enter the DR backup. This is a dedicated, totally automatic job that dumps the CSDB and exports that SQL database to a safe location, usually running a few times a day. Notice that last bullet point, though? It is deliberately kept completely separate from your normal client data backups. And that makes sense, right? Because after a true disaster, you literally cannot restore a single file of client data until you have completely rebuilt the CommServe and its memory first. Now, to protect against downtime, you essentially have two main options for high availability. The first is the recovery-based DR backup we just mentioned. You rebuild the CommServe from the latest dump. It's your ultimate safety net, even if everything else burns down. The second option is standby-based CommServe Live Sync. This one continuously syncs your data over to a standby server. So if your production CommServe suddenly crashes, you can instantly fail over to the standby, which massively reduces your overall downtime. Finally, Section 6, Troubleshooting and Logs. Let's cover exactly where to look when things go wrong. You know, Commvault actually makes this surprisingly intuitive once you know the secret. The logs are named directly after the core services. So if a job just won't start or stays queued forever, you open jobmanager.log. If events or email alerts aren't firing, you check evmgrs.log. If the CommServe can't seem to talk to a client, you jump into cbd.log. But please remember that bottom bullet point. Before you even double-click a text file, check the Windows services to make sure they are actually running. I can't stress that enough. Now, if you do need to dive into the logs, this is pretty much what it looks like. Real logs are just plain text files that you read from top to bottom. The real art of Commvault operations is knowing which log belongs to the misbehaving service, opening it up, and quickly training your eye to scan down the text and jump straight to the lines that say error or warning. That's how you follow the breadcrumb trail. All right, let's bring this all together. Here are the 5 key takeaways you need to remember from today's explainer. Number 1, the CommServe is the single brain of the CommCell, just one per environment. Number 2, the CSDB running on SQL is its memory, protected above absolutely everything else. 3, our golden rule one last time. It controls the jobs, but backup data never, ever flows through it. 4, the core services run the environment, and they're what name the logs you'll use for troubleshooting. And number 5, the DR backup is how you recover the brain, and Live Sync is how you keep a standby ready to go. Well, that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into the brain of the operation. But, you know, it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. We established that control flows top-down from the CommServe, but what actually happens when the muscle steps in to do the heavy lifting? Join us in our next explainer where we're going to break down the media agent. We'll explore exactly how your data moves, how it gets deduplicated, and how it finally hits the storage disk. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss it. See you then!